Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader, Jersey First TV, back with you tonight. So excited to bring to you someone who is incredibly inspirational. I respect what he does so much. Jim White, Executive Director of Covenant House. Welcome to Jersey First TV.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me, Elizabeth.
We are thrilled to have you here. You represent the best in New Jersey. You really do, Jim. And I know you're a humble guy. You can tell by just spending a little bit of time talking to you. But, we've had so many issues on this show in the past year. One thing that we all need to hear about is compassion. We all need to hear about people like you that are doing things in our community, are truly making a difference. And it's important that we each get involved. So we want to talk about your organization. We want to talk about what you're seeing in the community, how you guys are making a difference out there, and inspire others to get involved. Because you know what? Americans are great at doing that. And when they hear these stories and they see these opportunities, they know that they can make a difference too. So Jim, tell us about Covenant. How did you get involved, and what do you guys specialize in?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you about our mission and our young people who are inspiring, and our staff who are phenomenal. I will tell you that I got involved this coming February. It'll be 40 years when I started at Covenant House.
Wow.
In New York. Yeah, no. So
wow.
Yeah. So when you say compassion, I think the end of that is passion, and I have passion, which is essential for compassion. But so we deal with homeless, runaway, and young people experiencing human trafficking too, as well, and have kids who are kind of out there. I guess the common denominator for all the kids that we serve is their aloneness. That's what they all have in common, but they come from different economic backgrounds, geographic backgrounds, all sorts of but mostly poverty, to be honest, but that's what comes. And I started in New Jersey here about 30 years ago. And I think our gift, our charism has been to listen. So we started with no beds, we had 2 vans, and drove around in Atlantic City and Trenton at the time, and then in Newark. And we just really listened. Really gave space to our young people to really talk about who they were and to stay in the conversation, mostly listening. And 2 things happen when you really listen, or happened to us. We got connected and inspired, and we fell in love. And that's really where we started. And our programs have built from that. We now have 185 beds in New Jersey for kids who come to us who are homeless. And we provide them with, when you love someone, right? You have children. What do you do?
You take care everything.
You do everything, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, what our strategy has been, is looking at people individually, listening to them, and then trying to build the services and support around them. And kids need different things, So, but we have lawyers, and we have job coaches and education. We try to get them to a place where they can stand safely. Safety is really important. If you're out on the street, if you were out on the street, you could probably keep it together for a night, or maybe 2. But if you're in 3 or 5 nights, you're starting to make decisions you wouldn't normally make, and you move into street behavior. So we're really an option out of that. And we have to build relationship and connection. Just because we say to our kids, "Oh, you can come and stay here," they don't trust us, and why would they? We're supposed to care for them. Right. So we have to begin with that connection. That's what it's really like, as they say in the hokey pokey. That's what it's all about, right?
Well, to meet that, that need that they have for connection, you need to feed them and house them. I mean, we have to do the physical before we can deal with the mental, or even, the spiritual. So this age group, Jim, 18 to 22 primarily, what a critical time. These are kids coming out of difficult situations. They don't really know where they're going, what they need to do. I don't know that many of us in New Jersey think about homelessness in that age group. How much of an issue is it?
Well, it's really significant. Think about it, is, first of all, it's adolescence, or, and adolescence, as you know, is expanding. So they're in that developmental stage. They can be challenging as it is. And so they're often thrown out. Our kids are pushed out of the home, and they're out on the street. They don't have a network. They don't have a connection. And so they're really alone. And that's really their greatest poverty. And so, but we try to give them an opportunity to begin again and to trust again. But the problem is significant. We have kids aging out of foster care.
Yeah.
Although I think the foster care system, since I started, has really improved in terms of trying to tool young people. But there's so many young people. Most of our kids were not in the foster care system. They were pushed out of their homes.
Mm.
So, and what I just wanted to say too is this is as much as it's a challenging time, and you have some older teenagers, so
Yeah.
you get this, but it's also an extraordinary opportunity to have them take the right path.
Absolutely.
Because if you're an adult homeless person, to get out of that is more than challenging. And so
Yeah.
we think we have this wonderful opportunity to get them back in school, to
Yep.
get them employed, and so they don't get on that homeless track where they're, homeless for an extended period of time, because then the crawl out of that is very, very challenging. So we feel a little pressure, like,
Let's get them.
time's ticking. We gotta really
Yeah.
redirect them, and we got to give them hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a critical age, because you're right. Once they get past that 22, 23, and this starts to become a permanent feeling situation, a cycle,
Yeah.
they don't know anything else. They forget what else it was like. Walk us through what that looks like. Finding an 18-year-old, for example, who is either a runaway or has been homeless for some time or has been trafficked. Let's not forget that. Walk us through a typical example of how you interact with them. How do you find them? What are the various ways they come to you? And then what are your next steps?
Great. So first of all, it isn't typical, right? Kids come to us. So about 40% of our kids find their way to us. They
Wow.
Google, they call, but 60% of our young people are directed to us through what we call a community partner. It could be a school, a social worker, a church, the police, PAL. They come from all different ways. Hospitals is a big referral source for us as well. And so they come to us. But the real important thing for us and what we've learned is it's more than just getting them directed to us. They have to get connected to us. And that's really, we have this wonderful opportunity. To your point before, when you feed them and you clothe them with no questions asked, and you create a safe space for them, that's a major deposit in their emotional bank account, right? They can start to maybe trust that. And so it's really important too that we're consistent in our care. Our meals are at a very specific time, because once you start to deviate, then it's inconsistent and anxiety can raise, right? So we really have to be really prudent and on top of our game as we provide, good, consistent care.
And when these children, I'm going to still call them children, but they're young adults, really. When they come to you, when you're able to, bring them in, give them a bed, you start to feed them, you start to reach, their first set of needs. What does that look like afterwards? How long are they staying with you? What are you doing with them in terms of getting them back on their feet and eventually into the world again?
Right. Well, let me just start a little bit. So often when our kids come in, they want to sleep, right? Because they've been honest, or brush their teeth, or take a shower, or get new clothes. So, we have to provide all of those things. And so it's a great question. And the question that we often ask is, what's the loving thing to do? So for some of our kids, they need to go home. And for some of our kids, and most of our kids, they have no home to go to. So each person's looked at individually, and maybe this person needs some mental health support. Maybe they need addiction support. Maybe they just need an opportunity for education. I went to a lot of graduations this past year, which fill my heart. Great stuff. So, but I also went to funerals this year as well. We just had 2 of our young people in the last month were shot. And one was killed and one survived. And so we are on the edge. These are not, these are kids that are on the edge there. And we really have this opportunity to move them into a health, a place to grow and to stabilize. But to answer your question, it depends. Some of our kids stay with us for 2 years. Some of our kids stay with us for an extended period of time. They need that. And some, it's a short stop, it's a hot meal. It's to realign. It's to get connected maybe again with family and return. A lot of our kids return home, but they need a break and they need some coaching around family communication or things like that. So it's not a cookie cutter thing. And often too, which is interesting, is what's first presented as where they're at is not really where they're at.
Interesting.
So we need to remain good listeners, because what they show front is often protection. And as you kind of get connected and sit with them and build that rapport, kind of some of the real stuff comes out. And then that's exciting to really help them move forward.
Peel back the layers and begin to, find what their specific issues are. So someone could stay with you for a while, some immediately go home. Are you working with any other agencies? I mean, this is a privately funded primarily organization, right?
Yeah. So we can't do it alone, right? We have a mothers and babies program. So we take in homeless, pregnant girls and help them through having their baby and becoming mothers. And they stay with us for a long period of time, because we've learned that bonding time, you don't want to pull that apart, right? So some of our moms stay with us, for 18 months or so. It depends on, what their resources are too. Some people go home. So we work with a lot of agencies, and we have a lot of partners. And this work is never done that would be arrogant to try to do it all.
Right.
With that said, we try to bring as much as we can in-house, because we have that relationship and they're safe in our home, right? Our program.
Yeah.
So it's but you can't do it alone. You gotta have a brother and a sister, in the vineyard swinging with you.
Yeah, it's big work. It's definitely big work. One of the things that I find so interesting, and I think you have an unusual viewpoint, especially after 40 some years doing this, I'm sure you could write a book, a few movies, many things, but I want you just for a moment to pause and give some advice to parents. Some parents may be listening right now who are struggling with a teen, who maybe the home situation is not good. Maybe this teen is actually at risk, and the parents may know that. Perhaps, something's about to happen that is difficult. What would you say to parents in those situations? How do they reach these teenagers that maybe they haven't been able to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to be careful, because if my kids are watching this, they're going to audit my response.
Sure.
Right? How kids can be on their parents, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that I remember a woman coming to me with a troubled daughter, and she was very worried about her. And she says, can you help me? She won't listen to me. And I was like, okay, that's your problem. And your problem is you want to be listened to.
Yeah.
And you got to flip that. And it's hard, it's hard to listen, because you're worried and you're anxious, and you have wisdom and experience, and you want to bestow that on their kids.
Yeah.
They can't hear it, for many of the times. I mean, they can, but it's about staying in the conversation. And of course, the conversation should go two ways. But I find often parents get frustrated. You talk about compassion. That's where you need to bring it to your own home, right? And it's easier said than done, because you worry and you get anxiety and you're frustrated and they're going down a bad path. But I think for many of them, sometimes you need outside help, and you should get that. That's not a shameful thing. I feel really good about where we've come as a society, where support for mental health is not looked down upon. I came from a place where, oh gosh, you couldn't do that. And if you did, you better not share it with the neighbors, right?
Yeah.
So I think we've evolved out of that. So you got to ask for help, especially if you're over your head.
Yes. Early.
Well, as I've said to one dad, I go, you're not Freud.
Yeah.
So stay out of the business, be a dad and get the help when necessary. But I think more importantly, it's that listening thing. Would be the advice I would give. Often young people are not heard. And they look, we all have, you have children, sometimes, you have a son, right? They do the thing.
Yeah. I know that well.
You got to just keep inviting them into that conversation and trying to, we have an expression at Covenant House, you can't make them eat, but you can set the best table.
I love that.
And our job is to set the best table possible. They may not eat. That's on them. All we can do is set the best table possible. So if we can do that in our homes by not judging when they say stupid stuff, which they will, and consumed by the phone, we have challenging times, but that's really the simple very
Good
challenging
advice,
advice I
Jim.
give.
That's excellent advice. It
Yeah.
definitely is. I want to talk a little bit about, you have the homeless, the runaways. The
Mhm.
third part of this is the trafficking, the human trafficking. Now, I think it's important for us to talk about that a little bit because it's not something that people realize. Sometimes it's in plain sight. They don't think about it in their daily lives. I want
Yeah,
you to talk about that aspect in New Jersey,
sure.
what it looks like, what your experience has been with it. What are the warning signs? You told me before we went live, sometimes it's by people are trafficked by people they know. So
Yeah.
educate us a little bit on that part of it.
Sure. So first, let me say that we did the largest in New Jersey, Covenant House, New Jersey. We did the largest extensive study on human trafficking in the
Wow.
country for this population, and we found out some interesting things. One of this, and we did it with Mount Sinai, who are great partners. But one of the interesting things we found out was of all the young people, 20% of our kids, 15% of our kids had experienced human trafficking, and over 20% participated in survival sex.
Wow.
And the one thing that was really interesting when we talk about right in front of your face, 40% of the young people who experienced human trafficking were in an emergency room during their trafficking experience. So it's right within the hospital's eyes. And I have to give credit to some of the medical institutions who get this now and are really trying to focus on this. And we at Covenant House are helping some of the medical institutions to be more sensitive to that. So this is a real problem.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I could tell you about it as well is that many of the young people who come to us who have experienced human trafficking don't raise their hand and say, I experienced human trafficking. They talk about being physically abused. They talked about being threatened. They talked about their lives being threatened, forced into different types of labor,
Right.
sex trafficking. And we are the ones who identify and let them know that they're trafficked. Or more importantly, start to treat the trauma.
Yeah.
What we've also learned is those who've experienced human trafficking, and this is kind of intuitive, have a higher degree of trauma than the normal, if you will, or the average person who comes into Covenant House.
Yeah.
So they've really experienced significant trauma and they've seen some real ugly things for sure. I mean, frightening things, right? The other side of the coin, and I really need to mention this because we talk about compassion too, is that they're also extraordinarily resilient.
Mm.
I mean, some of the things that our young people face and the fact that they can raise their eyes and say good morning to you and be about their business to try to build a better life is inspiring.
Wow.
Because I often, when I hear some of these stories, I thought if I experienced that, I'd probably stay in bed and throw the covers over my head and
Sure.
stay there. And some of them do, obviously. But so I think human trafficking is a real issue for us. We are the lead agency now in New Jersey. We've partnered with the Attorney General's office, who have been great in working with law enforcement. So when law enforcement comes in contact with anyone who experienced human trafficking, they call Covenant House and we work with them as well as our partners.
Yeah.
Again, this is not something that anyone can do on their own. The
Yeah.
needs are vast
Yeah.
and the numbers are significant. So no one can do this alone.
Wow. Well, that's why we need you guys, and that's why people need to support you. I think people sometimes take for granted if they haven't faced this. Often people think, oh, the government's doing something, and no, this is who's doing it right here. You guys are the ones, are the hands and feet who are out there, showing the love of God and really digging in and seeing the value in these young adults because they are truly valuable. And so it's runaways, it's homeless, it's trafficking, and these are things we need to be educated on too. We can't look the other way. We need to understand that it's out there. Have you seen increased numbers over the pandemic? Has that affected at all what you've been seeing?
It's a great question, and I just wanted to go on one point in terms of the government. Covenant House receives only 20% of its funding from the government.
Wow.
80%. And this is something to feel really good about for New Jersey. 80% of our funds come from generous people in New Jersey caring about our kids and our work.
Beautiful.
That's incredible, right? I mean, if you talk to other nonprofits, that's an impressive number.
Yeah.
So we're really proud of that. But back to the number question, which is a valid one. During COVID, throughout the country, many of the shelters, including Covenant House, saw a decrease in
Wow.
participation, which makes no sense
Hmm.
because domestic violence is up, addiction is up,
Sure.
suicide is up. So those are key factors that would draw people to us. And so we've been talking about this throughout the country, service providers saying this is a bit of a head scratch. That's starting to change now. And we
Mm.
think it has a little bit to do with the rent stabilization and not allowing people to be pushed out of their apartments and the eviction piece. We think it has something to do with that. And also, too, I think going into a congregate living
Yeah.
is more than scary.
Yeah.
We've had over 35 instances of young people test positive
Mm-hmm.
who came
Sure.
to us. We lost 2 young people to COVID who were with us and they had left us, but they were, you leave us, you're still part of us.
Yeah.
And that's been a major challenge for us. So I think that may have influenced the numbers as well. But
Yeah.
we're starting to see the numbers rise now.
Yeah. Sure.
And
Sure.
we expect to see, because of those factors of suicide and domestic violence and alcoholism and all those numbers going up, we would imagine and believe that we're going to see the numbers increase in New Jersey, not diminish.
Yeah, I would expect that would be the case. There are long-term implications of all the things everyone has been through. So we need you now more than ever, which brings us to the great question of people listening to this. We're going to share this all over the place. We need to tell them how they can help. I am certain you guys rely on volunteers, and certainly 80% of your budget is from individual donations. So
Right.
besides donating, which is so important, and not everyone can volunteer, but money is important, and to be part of your organization and be blessed by what you're doing through the blessing of finances is so important. But what else can people do if they want to get involved?
Well, I always like to say you can pray for us. Throw that
Yeah,
on the pile, right?
absolutely.
But I think we have volunteer opportunities now. We haven't been doing it live. We've
Mm,
only been doing it Zoom, which has kind of not been great to be. If you have
yeah,
a kid in school, you know what kind of not great it
yeah,
is, right, with
yeah,
Zoom. But we've done a little bit of that. But we're hoping to come back, and we're looking to come back in
yeah.
October. So we're excited for people to come and to do that as an opportunity. And then I'd like to pitch, if I can. We do have an event called Sleep Out,
Yeah.
and we invite people to join us in compassion, in solidarity with our young people. And it's symbolic, right? You're not homeless,
Right.
but you, for one night, you kind of put yourself out there a little bit. It isn't comfortable.
Wow.
And then you let your friends know, and they support you and they support our mission. And I don't know anyone who's really, I know people who've experienced it go, well, it wasn't great, comfortable wise, but I think it is meaningful to the people who sleep out. What I never realized was how meaningful it was going to be for our young people.
Mm,
They look out the window and they see people coming to sleep out in solidarity with their homelessness. It's a gift, right? And
wow.
so that's where solidarity really comes in, and thinking of the other guy. I know we're so challenged with what can we do with all of the difficulties we're looking at, and we think this is a small thing, but a
Yeah.
significant thing, good for the
Yeah.
soul to do, and good to help us. So I hope that you'll join us, and that's on November 19th. It's the Thursday before Thanksgiving is the exact.
Oh, that's beautiful timing. And
Yeah.
I've always admired that program. I think that's a brilliant idea. Whoever came up with that, it certainly does both things, right? It brings people closer to what you do, and it helps the people that you serve see that they're not alone, and people are willing to try to understand just a little bit, just for a
Yeah.
moment. You
It's
can't
just a
really,
moment.
but just
Yeah.
for a moment,
Yeah.
what it must be like. And it makes us all better people. I have to tell you, Jim, this is such an amazing chance to talk to you. Jersey First is dedicated to making the state a better place for families. And for us to be able to speak with an organization like yours that's all about compassion and reaching out to those in need at such a pivotal time in their life, ultimately, you're making Jersey a better place. And we can't thank you enough for doing that. I truly have to say we admire all the efforts, and your dedication 40 years is incredible to
Yeah.
other people. Really is just the love of God. And so I honor you for that. And I want you to tell people how they can reach the organization.
Yeah, it's covenanthousenj.org, and go on our website. And, we have a really cool thing there too, if you want. We're trying to get connected to kids, as I said. And so if you look around our website, you can take a tour, and our kids take you through the tour of our facilities and the services we provide. So it's a neat place, I think, to visit. I hope it is, for young people, obviously, but for your viewers, I think they'd find it pretty cool to see, the good programs and the care that we give for our kids in New Jersey who are homeless.
Well, it's very clear who you're focusing on when you go to the website. The first question is, are you a youth? Are you in need? Are you a young person in need? I mean, that is the pop-up window,
Yep.
and it's immediate, and we're there. We're here to catch you. And the stories that you must have are incredible. We'll need to have you back maybe someday, Jim. We'd love to hear from some people who might be willing to share the difference you've made in their life. I think that would be a great follow-up show some point.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. We've enjoyed some kids, have really transcended the darkness and are doing great things. And we have a couple of staff people who at one time were residents, and now they're working with kids. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Well, Jim, thank you again for coming. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Elizabeth.
you being part of the program. And to the audience, make sure you visit the Covenant House site. Make sure you take an opportunity. Maybe this Thanksgiving, that's what you do with your family. I know people look for things to think about the holidays, and what a great time to do the sleep out and really, understand what it feels like and get closer to this incredible organization that makes us really proud to be in New Jersey. Jim, thank you so much.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
All right. And to my audience, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Good night.
Good night.